joining. Shout out to Elena. Hello, welcome. How are you doing? Hi, welcome. Shout out to Ruth. Thank you for joining. Shout out to Zoe. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Finn. Shout out to Cody. Shout out to Jaquel. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Is it Jack or Jack? Shout out to Lenny. Shout out to Pixie. Shout out to Muna. Hi everyone, welcome. Shout out to Jimena. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Almendra. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Alexia. Nice to meet you, Alexia. Shout out to Meredith. Shout out to Antonella. Shout out to Clara. Shout out to Helena. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Yunche. Shout out to Carla. Shout out to Antonella. Hi everyone, welcome. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Delilah. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Lily. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Lorax. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Jonathan. Shout out to, oh yeah, I spelled it correctly. Shout out to Embry. Shout out to Lucy. Shout out to Angie. Shout out to Vivian. Shout out to Shyla. Shout out to Braylon. Braylons. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Lexi. Excuse me. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Landry. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Nia, or Naya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kai. Shout out to Kamoya. Shout out to Julie. Shout out to Addie. Shout out to Amara. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Amelie. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Casey. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Penny. Shout out to Uriah. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jennifer. Zillman. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Zava. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Whoops, I messed up. Shout out to Porter. Oh, I messed up. Shout out to Zahav. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Porter. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Kip. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Yandel. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Allison. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Daisy. Shout out to Emma. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Eloise. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Elena. Shout out to Ali. Shout out to Abraham. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Izzy. Shout out to Courtney. Shout out to Arlette. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Lila. Shout out to Issa. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Dragon. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Michaela. Or Michaela. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Viviana. Shout out to Renata. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Liam. Shout out to Crystal. Shout out to Haven. Shout out to Oren. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if I haven't shouted you out yet. Also, thank you for your patience. The chat goes by really fast and it's hard for me to keep up. So I appreciate you taking the time to write your name. Shout out to Dee. Shout out to Landon. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Adina. Shout out to Valentina. Shout out to Serenity. Shout out to Quinn. Shout out to Madeline. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Gidi. Shout out to Simran. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Daisy. Shout out to Pixie. Shout out to Miranda. Shout out to Vonnie. Shout out to Adeline. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Molly. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Aranza. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Avery. Shout out to Christiana. Shout out to Courtney. Shout out to Hedia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Hedia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Marlon. Shout out to Kari. Shout out to Roa. Shout out to Crystal. Shout out to Brianna. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Evelyn. Shout out to Sebastian. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Kitty. Shout out to Giddy. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Malaya. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Manisha. Shout out to Oliver. Shout out to Classy. Shout out to Denise. Shout out to Zova. Shout out to Jane. Shout out to Penelope. Shout out to Owen. Shout out to Emmanuel. Shout out to Joy. Thank you everyone for your patience. Shout out to Brayden. Shout out to Serafina. Shout out to Every. Shout out to Sayil. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Liam. Shout out to Sailor. Shout out to Michael. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Noah. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Joyce. Shout out to Manisa. Shout out to Melanie. Shout out to Alina. Shout out to Mavale. Good luck on your volleyball game. Wishing you all the best. Shout out to Hazrat. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kevin. Shout out to Aubrey. Shout out to Adelina. Shout out to Cookie. Happy birthday. Shout out to Brenda. Shout out to Crosby. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Walker. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Kobe. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Ronnie. Shout out to Heather. Shout out to Zaire. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ada or Ada. Shout out to Salman. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Nathan. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Jonathan. Shout out to Eleonora. Shout out to Harry. Shout out to Aria. Shout out to Joelle. Shout out to Tyler. Shout out to Adele. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Gabby. Shout out to Hoda. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Evelyn. Brooklyn, I got you. Right here. Alexis, I got you. Shout out to Joshua. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Write your name in the chat if I haven't shouted you out. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the shout outs. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out and support as well. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Michelle Gold. Thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Levi Will. Or is it Levi? Just Levi? Shout out to Levi. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Ava. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Luth. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Sadat. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ceci. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Isla. Shout out to Liv. Shout out to Yailise. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Antonio. Shout out to Zarnay. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mel. Shout out to Devin. Shout out to Estrid. Shout out to Giovanni. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Lavina. Shout out to Missy. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Jacqueline. Shout out to M. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to London. Shout out to Janacy. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Burra. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Briley. Shout out to Gazal. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Melody. Shout out to Raji. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Lily. Thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Jalen. Oops. Oh no, I spelled it correctly. Shout out to Salma. Shout out to Ari. King. Shout out to Paloma. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Iris. Shout out to Kay or Kai. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Zion. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Marley. Shout out to Issa. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Julietta. Shout out to Aubrey. Shout out to Lele. Shout out to Valentina. Thank you everyone for your patience. I know I write slow, so I appreciate you taking the time to write your name. Shout out to Mesa. Shout out to Ensley. Shout out to Humble. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Cortisha. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Maya. Whoops, Maya. Oh no, how do you spell Maya? Oh, Maya. There we go. Shout out to Lainey. Shout out to Yuzi. Shout out to Aria. Shout out to Jamie. Thank you for subscribing. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Malik. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Brooke. Shout out to Kendall. Shout out to Eli. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Amila. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Amelia. I think it's Amelia. Sorry if I mispronounce. Shout out to Sydney. Thank you, Sydney, for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Aiden. Shout out to Timothy. Shout out to Grayson. Shout out to Margot. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Jane. Shout out to Liliana. Excuse me. Shout out to Lori. Shout out to Kalisha. Shout out to Darlene. I'm going to put your name over here so it fits. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Violet. Shout out to Chuya. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Adeline. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Alabama. Shout out to Kat. Shout out to Nyla. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Amory. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Evie. Thank you for subscribing. Or Evie. Shout out to Jasmine. Or Roger. I'm not sure. Jasmine. Shout out to Roger. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Joshua. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Callie or Collie. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Molly. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Aradia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Coco. Shout out to Lincoln. Shout out to Toby. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Carly. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Excuse me. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if I haven't shouted you out. Thank you for your patience. I truly appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the shout outs. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out as well. Shout out to Fatima Zara. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Raya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Logan. Shout out to Elizabeth. Shout out to Caitlin. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Greta. Shout out to Penny. Shout out to Sahar. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Briley. Shout out to Nev. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Samantha. Shout out to Henley. Shout out to Ariana. Shout out to Mary Kate. Shout out to Molly. Shout out to Daphne. Shout out to Melanie. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Gemma. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Avery. Thank you everyone for your patience. Shout out to Kayla. Shout out to Nanaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Bibi. Shout out to Malaka. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kate. Shout out to Messiah. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kono. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Silvana. Shout out to Cleopatra. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Ward. Shout out to Vay. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Lynette. Shout out to Lupita. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to Joe. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lanaya. Shout out to Amy. Shout out to Willow. Shout out to Grayson. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out to Saleya. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Legacy. Shout out to Isa. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Nikki. Shout out to Harry. Shout out to Azalea. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Jeesh. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Emmy. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Polly. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to Myers. Shout out to London. Shout out to Kaya, or Kaya. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Lacey. Shout out to Miriam. Shout out to Bethel. Shout out to Luna. Shout out to Malik. Shout out to... Sorry, the live stream goes really fast. Shout out to Coco. Shout out to Valerie. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Ainun. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Mason. Shout out to Ramon. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Cass. Shout out to Jade. Shout out to Helen. Shout out to Peyton. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Jazz. Shout out to Giselle. Shout out to Camia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Elijah. Shout out to Lizzie. Shout out to Mir. Shout out to Bella, I got you. Shout out to Madison. Shout out to Shalisha. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Jalea. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Nevaeh. Shout out to Rylan. I hope you feel better soon. Shout out to Elsie. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Aubrey. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to write your name. Also, thank you for your patience. I truly appreciate it because I know I don't write fast, so thank you for waiting. Shout out to Callie. Thank you, Callie, for your support. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Jenna. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Addie. I think there's two Addies. Shout out to Addie and shout out to Addie. Shout out to Briley. Shout out to Bryson. Shout out to Mooney. Shout out to Adelaide. Shout out to Sanaya. Shout out to Gabriella. Shout out to Marley. Shout out to Vanessa. Shout out to Zahav. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Jolie. Shout out to Macy. Shout out to Lexi. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Sutton. Shout out to Reem. Shout out to Eliana. Shout out to Kendrick. Shout out to Ace. Shout out to Ross. Shout out to Kinley. Shout out to Dominic. Shout out to Maylee. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Danny. Shout out to Brooke. Shout out to Jalen. Shout out to Lenny. Shout out to Kia or Kaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Evelyn. Shout out to Josiah. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Chesney. Shout out to King. Shout out to Abraham. Shout out to Taylor. Shout out to Jenny. Shout out to Connor. Shout out to Jake. Shout out to Zach. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Colin. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Christopher. Thank you so much for your patience. Shout out to Phoebe. Shout out to Desiree or Desari. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Grady. Shout out to Shalom. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Carter. Shout out to Destiny. Shout out to Gage. Shout out to Malik. Shout out to Liba. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Jaden. Shout out to Reagan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Mitsuba. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Jolene. Shout out to Eliza. Shout out to Arya. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Tracy. Shout out to Genesis. Shout out to Terrazas. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kip. Shout out to Damien. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to John. Shout out to Clara. Shout out to Anastasia. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Taylor. Shout out to Donald. Shout out to Gunner. Shout out to Lana. Shout out to Eliana. Shout out to Melina. Shout out to Allison. Happy birthday. Shout out to Jude. Shout out to Sienna. Shout out to Ciara or Kiara. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jenny. Shout out to Kyron or Kieran. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sam. Shout out to Jade. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Blue. Happy birthday. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to AG. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the live stream. I also post other content, so I hope you can check it out as well. Excuse me. Shout out to David. Shout out to Briley. Shout out to Jace. Shout out to Lillian. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Thomas. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Valentina. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Nevaeh. Shout out to Ariana. Shout out to Dalen. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kensley. Shout out to Kamarli. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Allie. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Aber. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Rosalie. Shout out to Riley. Happy birthday. Shout out to Zaria. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Lincoln. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Jackson. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Mary. Shout out to Mabinta. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Yunche. Happy birthday. Shout out to Julissa. Shout out to JJ. Shout out to Camia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Rhea. Or Raya. Sorry if I mispronounced her name. Shout out to Lori Ann. Shout out to Haram. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Saw. Shout out to Timmy. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to David. Shout out to Blue. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Rashana. Shout out to Nayeli. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Annalie. Shout out to Sammy. Thank you for your support. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Xavier. Shout out to Nazish. Thank you for your patience. I'm so sorry. Sometimes the live stream goes really fast and I can't keep up. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Manon. Shout out to Brooks. Shout out to Everly. Shout out to Ibuki. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Frankie. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Kia or Kaya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Leva or Leva. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Nancy. Shout out to Miriam. Shout out to Steffi. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Oakley. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Keely. Shout out to Amina. Shout out to Lola. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Bazat. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Addison. Shout out to Elena. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Amariana. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sophia. Oh, I just put Sophia. Whoops. Shout out to Clara. Shout out to Antonio. Shout out to Kira or Kara. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Paris. Shout out to Cat's Eye. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Zuridin. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sanai. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emma, I got you. Shout out to Emily. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lonnie or Lainey. Shout out to Sunil. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emma, I got you. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Xavier. Shout out to Vahed. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Stacy. Shout out to Nova. Shout out to these people. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my shout outs. I live stream every day I also post other content. I hope you can check it out and support as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to write your name. I truly appreciate it. Take care. Please leave a like. Take care. I'll see you next time.